Welcome to the Human First podcast with me, Adrian Murphy, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have Adam Ashe with me as my guest. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. Good to be here.
Yes, absolutely. You and I have had the opportunity to get to know each other a wee bit over the last wee while, but I think it'd be great to just hear a bit about your story and your journey. A lot of people will be familiar with your rugby career. Maybe kind of talk us through that a bit, and then we'll get you right up to date.
Yeah, so I guess now I'm a retired ex-professional rugby player. Finished playing about must have been a year ago now, just over a year ago now. So grew up just outside Stirling in a little village called Alva. Got into rugby at a young age, stopped, played a bunch of other sports, then came back to rugby when I was about 14 years old. Managed to sort of leave high school, get an academy contract at Glasgow Warriors. After a couple of years, turned professional. Spent 10 years at the Warriors, played for Scotland 7 times. I should know that. I think it's 7 times. And then I went out to the US to play for the last 3 years of my career, or 2 years playing. So I played 2 years in LA, which was a nice change of scenery. And then I coached for a year in Chicago, and I literally just moved back to Glasgow about 9 months ago. So back settled here, got a few bits and bobs on the go. People, if they know rugby, probably would know me from that, but starting to branch into different things now. And I guess, like, for me at the moment, still kind of going through the transition out of the game and playing around with different things that, you know, I might be interested in sort of pursuing longer term. So that's sort of where I'm at just now.
So how did you find your way? You said you'd played various sports and stuff. You were obviously probably quite good at them, I'm going to guess. But how did you end up back at rugby, and then that became the focus? Yeah,
my school teacher, my PE teacher, he was a big rugby guy. He ran the rugby team in high school. But I was playing football for the most part. And one day he walked past me in the corridor and he said, "What the hell are you doing playing football? Look at the size of you. You need to be playing rugby." And I had a few mates that were playing rugby, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and play. And because I'd played at a younger age, I'd played for 2 or 3 years, maybe when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. When I went back to I sort of picked it up really quickly, and from a lot of the skills that you sort of have to perform and the movements and football and the athleticism involved in that, it came back really quick, and sort of managed to advance relatively quickly. But I was bigger than most of the kids, so you know, you enjoy getting stuck in and tackling, and I was constantly getting told off by the referee in football for being a bit too aggressive and physical, so rugby was the game for me.
I do have a friend we'll talk about afterwards, a client of mine who has memories of you playing 5-a-sides up in Alva. He's stepping into maybe kind of the older guys' games. So
I remember that. That was
he said to mention to you.
My dad used to play with a bunch of guys. And myself and my brother went along a couple of times. I've got an older brother. He's 18 months older than me, and he was like, we're chalk and cheese. My brother's like fiery, you know, like he is. He competes hard, and I'm a bit more relaxed. I still enjoy competing, but you know, it's not life or death for me. And I remember whoever this person is that you're talking about, my brother got into an argument with one of the older guys, and it was getting a bit heated. So I don't know, my dad after that was like, right, we're no bother, I'll take you back again, we'll just keep you away.
We'll check who that was afterwards. So obviously that's it's a short career anyway. You know, you would have known that going in sport, particularly team sports like that. There's going to be something else afterwards, and know that, you know, we can get into some of the really exciting things that you've done since. But going in, did you go in eyes open at that when you kind of really thought, oh, right, now I've got a contract, Warriors, international, the whole thing? Are you thinking about that at the time?
Not really. From when I first got my academy contract to probably when I was 22, I was fully obsessed. I was in obsessed mode. You know, whatever I had to do to get my professional contract and earn money from playing rugby, I would have done. I'd have ran through a wall, I'd have jumped in front of a bus. It was that kind of commitment. And then when I got to probably 22, 23 years old, certain things started to happen within my career. Things like getting injured, things like getting dropped, on big occasions where the kind of rug's pulled from under your feet and you're thinking, oh, well, my whole identity is invested in this. And you have experiences where you realise the pain of that, and when it can be taken away from you and pulled like that, there's a consequence to that. So I guess I began to sort of wake up a little bit and question who I saw myself to be, and that led to getting interested in other things and starting to explore things that I might be interested in moving forward. And I guess, like, to describe the type of person or player that I was moving forward from that point was that I had a lot of interests outside the game, and I enjoyed pursuing them. One of them was a business, Puresport, that we've spoken about before, which was founded by myself and my business partner back in 2018, and I was at that point about 24 years old, so relatively young, very green. You know, no real idea about any of it, just running with it, and you know, we sort of made these health products that were sort of benefiting people and whatnot. But that whole period of sort of 24 to 30 when I retired was a really good learning curve for me, and I managed to sort of go through a whole load of experiences that I think stood me in good stead for transitioning out of the game, and gave me a little bit of perspective on what life might look like when that time comes and rugby has to finish.
It must have been something, there always is, from the discipline of particularly likes of rugby, that you were able to take into that because 24 is quite young. I mean, there's lots of young entrepreneurs, but to do that while having a professional career and actually ultimately building what's a very successful business, did you take something from the lessons you'd learned over those years up until then from rugby? Yeah,
I think so. Just like the ability to probably just deal with fear was the big one. Like, you know, when you're young and you're playing rugby and you're coming up the kind of ranks, you know, when you're going from under 18s kind of boys teenage rugby to men's, like, just as an example, you face fear. You're like, I'm playing against men now, they're a lot bigger and stronger than me, they might be 10 years older than me, they know all the dirty tricks in the game that they can get under my skin with. So you face that fear. And I think when you have a passion or an interest and you want to pursue it, and it can be even harder when you're in the limelight of an athlete, professional athlete in rugby. It's very easy to not pursue other things because you know, people are looking at you. But yeah, I think like the ability to just kind of follow through and commit to something, although there's a lot of uncertainty and fear, was something that I think I took from rugby into business and probably into some other areas of my life. But yeah, there's so many things that I had no idea about. Like, you know what it's like when you start a business, or you know, you step into a business, whatever it is. That there's often a steep learning curve, and rugby was very good because I think, you know, a lot of the sort of core principles that were needed to perform in business, just things like discipline, turning up on time, you know, communicating and speaking were good learnings. But business, when it's your own thing, you know, it is a different ball game because, you know, I'm turning up and playing in a rugby team and there's another 30 or 40 guys there. I'm a cog within that. But when it's your thing, you're responsible and you're having to direct and manage all that. So yeah, that was challenging. Definitely.
You find it a lonelier place than being part of the team like that. You know, you're, as you say, you're kind of integral to the team, but you're one of 15. At any point, suddenly you're out there and you're on your own and you're exposed.
Yeah, it's scarier. It's a scarier place.
Yeah.
You know, you've got much more responsibility, I think. And the position I played in rugby wasn't necessarily someone who like kicks the ball over the goals or, you know, I'm not a hooker throwing the ball in. Like, that is tough. Like, that's a lot of pressure to deal with. But yeah, in business, when it's your own thing, it's your responsibility. And, you know, there can be all sorts of different dynamics at play. But, you know, I ended up staying in rugby for another 6 years after founding that business, but my business partner, he stepped out a year or so after that. So he sort of, luckily, we had him who could step in there and really drive things whilst I was still almost being swallowed up a little bit by rugby. And that ended up being really good for the business because there was a dynamic of us both doing different things, but somebody could step in and lead. So it's a roller coaster, but one that, as I say, I think gave me a lot of perspective now coming towards the end and stepping out of the game.
Yeah. And what made you start Puresport while you were doing that? Was it a thought to financial security, and or were you just trying to do something good, or both?
Yeah, it was really just solving a problem in my own life. I was going through an injury, back-to-back ankle injury, got a surgery on my ankle, gave it the sort of 12 weeks to recover that was meant to get me back on the field, but you know, I think it was about 20 weeks had passed and my ankle was still no good, and I was using anti-inflammatories and painkillers just to stay on the training field, but I hadn't yet played a game yet. So at that point I started to kind of struggle, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Am I going to get back on the field? Is this a permanent thing? So I started looking into alternative sort of health supplements that might help with pain. And I'd been listening to some podcasts, guys out in the US, Joe Rogan, a guy called Aubrey Marcus, some people might be familiar with him, but they were talking to people at that point who had been using, athletes who'd been using CBD out in the US. The market was a little bit more evolved than we were developed back here. So I tried it, and it helped massively. I managed to stop using the anti-inflammatories and some of the painkillers, and I was able to just use CBD, and it seemed to be a real sort of turning point for me with that injury. So I knew there was something in it. I thought, you know, there's something to this. Athletes don't have access to it in the UK at the moment, so maybe there's something that can be done with bringing a product to the market and testing it in a way, because it does come from the cannabis plant, and ultimately THC is banned in sport. So there was a lot of kind of discrepancies and things that had to be done properly. So yeah, we managed to get products made, get products tested, and ultimately players started using it and seeing the same benefits, and then they wanted to share and talk about it, and that's when we started to see that real growth. So it was really an idea that came from solving a problem in my life, and I think how I often approach a lot of the things that I pursue now is like, if I've solved something in my own life and I can see the benefit, then it might be something that I might want to solve for other people. So it's kind of like it's quite a simple analogy, but it seems to work quite well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would stick with that one just now. And then so you know, beyond rugby, you've already got Puresport on the go, as you said. You actually maybe take a wee step back, because I'm curious, just out of my own personal interest. You moved to LA. How different was that playing in that environment as opposed to training up at Scotstoun on a minging November night?
Yeah, God. I did not miss the cold and rain. Spent 2 years in LA, and I trained in the rain once.
Is that right?
Didn't play any games in the rain. One day there was rain, we trained in it, but very different. I think, like, for me at that point, I was 27, nearly turning 28, and I was ready to step down a little bit. I'd had a lot of injuries within a short amount of time, and I was really questioning whether or not I had the ability to keep playing at the top level, and America looked like a good option for me, because it definitely was a step down. So I went out there. The way that things unfolded, I ended up taking like a half pay cut from my salary that I was on at Glasgow Warriors, because a new coach had come in, and I'd still had a year in my contract. And he said to me, look, you can stay or you can go, but I'm going to bring in another few players that are in your position, and you're going to be down the pecking order. And then my agent called me after I had this conversation with the coach, and he's like, oh, I've got another opportunity for you out in LA. I was like, I'm going. I'm not playing a year. I'm out. So I'll take the half pay cut, enjoy the sun, and do something a little bit different. So it was a pretty straightforward decision, you know, like obviously you want to be earning as much as you can within that small window of time, but I had absolutely no regrets going out there and doing that and doing it for less money. But yeah, an amazing experience to go and live somewhere else, learn about a new culture, meet a bunch of new friends, just explore another part of the world. It was class. It was so fun. I would recommend all professional players to try and, from whatever country you've kind of grew up playing in, and maybe you've played professionally, if you can go away and experience another country, it's definitely worthwhile. It really, when I think back to my rugby career, it's probably the standout thing is playing in another country, and meeting new people and having a good time.
That's brilliant. And so we bring it to today, and as we sit here, what's next? What are you doing? What's coming down the road?
So just now I've done a little bit of investing into youngish companies throughout my career. So I'm involved in sort of 5 or 6 companies. A couple of those are startups, and then 3 or 4 of those are a little bit older, in the sense that they're probably 5 or 6 years old, a little bit further along the road. But one of those companies that I'm involved in as an investor, I do a little bit of consultancy work for them too. So just it's only a couple of days a week, but it really is just it's a company called Zapity, which is it's not the typical type of company that somebody like me would be involved in. It's a tech company. Obviously, being from a sporting background, it's pretty much the opposite. Zapity is a file sharing collaboration platform, and it's really a storage platform as well. And I got on board with Zapity through an investor that we had in Puresport, and this guy was a lot older than me, and he had his own business, and he was sort of looking to get involved in different companies and potentially do a bit of sort of a higher risk investing. Obviously, with that type of thing, it is higher risk. But he had helped us massively in Puresport sort of shape and pave the way that business went, and helped us navigate a load of problems. So it was through him that I got introduced to Zapity. Zapity is a company that I guess they're sort of 3 years old now, and are now getting to a point where the product is pretty much almost ready and is ready to get into the market. So my job was really just to come in and sort of build some presence online with the brand, social media, manage investor relationships and that type of thing, and really just business development. That was really what it was. So that's been fun. I do a bit of that a couple of days a week. I do actually, over the last sort of 9 months, I've started doing quite a lot of writing.
Okay.
Now, when you say writing, you probably have this image in your head,
memoirs
to sit down with a bit of paper and scribing away, but it's
like
not quite that.
No.
That's exactly. Well, I've started writing a lot, and just on the laptop, but I'm quite interested in moving into more of kind of the digital online space. I'm actually writing a course. I'm nearly finished it. It's an online digital course for young rugby players, sort of 15 to 20 years old, who are aspirational and want to sort of move into the professional game or move on in their careers and develop. And it's called the Mental Framework, and it's really just practical lessons from an ex-professional rugby player around the things that these young players can do to sort of catch the eyes of the people that make the decisions with whether or not they progress or not. So, it's looking at things, just practical mindset lessons around how to deal with the fear of making mistakes, how to communicate, how to lead, what are the different ways that you can lead in a sports team. So I will be sort of moving more in that direction, and probably start doing a little bit of consulting with private schools, and obviously individuals can take the course. But I'm really passionate about coaching. I did that for a year in Chicago once I left LA, but it was a very, very sort of intense role within an organisation that was in its first year, and it was good. I enjoyed it, but the one thing that I was quite conscious of at the same time is that I had a lot of other things that I wanted to also pursue, and you can't really do that when you're in a role that is as intense as full-time professional coaching. So I do want to still coach, but I'm probably going to do it from more of a consultancy point of view, maybe building some digital products online that can impact people and make a big difference for their lives and that type of thing. So that, do a bit of podcasting, a little bit of event hosting. So I've got 3 or 4 things on the go that kind of keep me ticking along at the moment, and just still trying to figure it all out, really. It's not, I don't think I've yet fully come to the point where I'm like, this is what I'm doing for the next 30 years. I think it might change a load, but I'm just trying to figure out things that I enjoy and do those.
I think it's half the battle. It's a cliche, but it's true. If you can do something that you love, then you'll never work a day in your life. That's pretty much it. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't have its challenges along the way, of course. But bigger picture, you love it, you're making a difference, and I think in these conversations, already seeing that that's a big part of people's motivation. It's like solving a problem. Maybe there's a problem you solved, as you said, for yourself first, and you go, hang on a minute, I should be doing this for other people. If you do that well, then hopefully there's some benefit beyond that. You've got a young family now, you've got to start thinking about these things. You're not mid-20s rugby player just enjoying yourself.
Having his life, partying on
Not that
the
you're
beach.
not enjoying yourself now either, of course, but
it does change your perspective.
It changed your perspective a bit. How do you start to think about that, and a bit about, right, we do need to, we've got to think about, again, financial security. We've got to have that, got to have some income coming in. You've got to think about, right, okay, much further down the road now. At least it's not about, I guess it's not about getting injured now, which is a big part of I guess, your career and battling that. And as you say, that's something I hadn't even considered, was how you overcome being dropped for a big game, and what impact that must have on you mentally. And I get, maybe is that where some of this is, the coaching side of it's come from for you?
100%. I have naturally, I think, just become really interested in the mind, psychology, and how we can thrive. That is real. I think, if I was to underlay the things that I'm really passionate about, it would be that. It's I love to see people doing well. I love to, I've had the experience of, what it's like in sport and business, where you have a real problem and you have to try and overcome it, and you do it, and it's what a sigh of relief, and it is an amazing thing. But that can be framed up in loads of different ways, whether it being a mental thing that you've got going on and you get a bit stuck with it. But the transition out of the game is a tricky period for a lot of people. I was really fortunate that through my career I managed to put a few things in place and explore other opportunities that gave me a little bit of breathing room, and almost provided a couple of pillows and a bit of a safety blanket, if you could put it like that, for that time. So I guess I'm sort of thinking more and more about the future. I've just had a little boy, he's 3 months old, and it's how can I build the future for him now? That's my motivation. It's not so much about me anymore. It's how can I make sure that he has everything that he needs, my wife has everything that she needs for the future, and also how can I spend as much time with him as possible. When I'm thinking about what I'm going to do for work, I've seen how business can unfold and the challenges that are there in business. Things don't always go well, and you can become a bit more cynical as you get older.
To certainty, probably. They don't always go well.
Exactly. When I think back to maybe even 8 years ago, I was a much more optimistic person, and now I'm probably following in the footsteps as my father. He's somebody who would always look at the risks now. What could go wrong. And that's been a bit of a shift in my mindset. But ultimately, I think for me, it's what can I do that's going to serve someone else now, instead of serving just directly me. Obviously I'm still important, but there's a bigger picture at play now, and I think that has changed the way that I look at things.
Going back to thinking ahead, right? So over the next 10 years, you guys going to start to grow up, you want to spend time with him, you've got some interests. Where do you see yourself if you were to put yourself, close your eyes and put yourself somewhere in 10 years' time? What are you doing? Who's there? What does it feel like? Who are you surrounded by?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think 10 years' time, I think I would like to be able to work, hopefully on my own terms. I'd like to try and take as much kind of responsibility back into my own hands, in terms of how much I can earn and how I'm going to do that. And it's not necessarily through the means of a business, but I am interested in moving a bit more online. I think the internet has changed the game for how individuals, or even one person businesses can make money. And I think where my head's at the moment, it would definitely be trying to impact people in as positive a way as possible, potentially through doing that, creating things online, different assets. And the reason for that is that I think you're not necessarily selling time for money, and when it comes to the family, it's I want to spend as much time as possible with them. I want to see my kids growing up. People keep telling me, well, the kids grow up like that, and you'll miss it if you're not there and you're not kind of present. So that's kind of rung true for me, and it's I could be going and working and potentially build another business and do that, but I don't necessarily know if that type of business is what I want to do. But I do think I would be interested in maybe going down the route of sort of more consulting and maybe more the digital space, because I do think that like it's a different model. You're not necessarily selling your time for money. You're selling you're selling something, but you don't necessarily need to be there the whole time.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think a mixture between being there some of the time and working with those people, but also being able to provide a product for them that they can do without me being there. I'd love to go down that route, and it would allow me to spend time with the family, but I'm still 3 or 4 years away from getting to that point, I think, because I'm learning so much. Like I'm I'm doing a lot of kind of studying online as to how to get there, and still trying to figure out specifically what it is that I'll talk about, because like I've got a lot of really like things that I'm interested and passionate about, but when you try and sort of like align them to things that are important to people and that people actually need to know, like there's a bit of a kind of fleshing out period there. So yeah, I think that's important, but also, you know, I think what I've built and some of the assets that I have, like I obviously want them to continue working for me, so that in 10 years' time they're bigger. You know, they've done some work. So that's going to be important too. But yeah, that's probably the main thing. And I want to be fit and healthy, and I know you're the same. You know, you enjoy keeping fit and active. Like that's a big part of my life too. So I hope that in 10 years' time I'm fitter and healthier than I am now.
Right.
That's a goal of mine as an aim. So that too.
I think it's hard to put your finger on it, and I get, you know, I get the privilege to sit and chat to people like you today, and talk to interesting people every day that are doing completely different things, right? Everybody's doing something different, and we see over the piece that journey isn't a straight line, you know, and change is inevitable. Stuff happens, you just don't expect it. So you set yourself up for success, and then you're able to adapt and just go with it. I'm totally with you on that one. I was thinking, you know, if you can be kind of healthier, wealthier and wiser as you get older, then that's got to be a good thing. You do the right things for the right reasons. How do you think about planning that out? You know, because I mean, you've touched on, you know, making sure that what you've got right now, what you've worked for so far, works for you, which is really important. That's kind of, you know, if I think about, put my day job hat on, that's really what we're building towards for people, is some sense that what they've done and all their hard work, yes, provides them with a lovely lifestyle today, and they can go and do spend time with family and go on holidays and all that lovely stuff. But also that it's working for the future. It's going to give them options and freedom and peace of mind. Do you think much about that?
Yeah, I do. I think over the last like 2 years I've started to think about it a lot more. Like ultimately I think, yeah, you want to be like, we don't get taught about this stuff, if we're being honest. You know,
we don't. That's a big problem.
And I think it's only until you meet somebody who is educated as a young person that you really do begin to make a plan. You know, I have done certain things over my career, being a professional rugby player. Like you earn at a young age more money than most people are earning at that age, but you also know that you're going to get to 35 or whatever it is, and you're probably going to have to go back to the start. So you have to think, like for me, it's like, what do I really need to live off now? It's like, what's the minimum amount that I can live off and be happy and support my family with, and then what am I going to do with the rest? So, you know, I've tried to kind of follow that, and, you know, I've invested my money into different places. Like, I would probably say that I'm maybe involved in a bit more higher risk investments than most people. Someone like you would probably tell me to not do that. That's fine. But I think, like, for the most part, like for me, it's the majority of what you have. You need to be reserved and conservative with it. Like that's extremely important. Like, and that's definitely the approach that I take. But you know, I think the thing for me is that I've probably seen quite a lot of success early on with starting a business and seeing it grow, and the value of that growing. And I think like that can almost be a bit of a fooling thing at times, because like ultimately that's not what happens all the time, and nearly even like 10% of the time. Like
first time out to do that is pretty good.
So it's like, again, it comes back to becoming a bit more cynical, and it's like trying to weigh up where it is that you place your assets, your money, whether it's in property, whether it's into different markets or whatever it is, high risk business. Like, so for me, I'm just trying to educate myself as much as I can on that, and people like you are helpful for young people like me.
It's such a, I mean, the financial literacy thing is a massive issue, and that goes right through. You know, nobody's really been taught that. Even it's not a new problem. This is a problem that's existed forever, and you see, you know, people coming out of the we talked about you know, social media and the internet now, lots and lots of positives, but fads, trends, really bad advice. There's lots and lots of that out there on TikTok and various other platforms, because it's unregulated. We are highly regulated, so we can't just say whatever we want. And I always think about how do we create a really kind of solid foundation for somebody, right? So if we can create that and give you then the freedom to go and do the things that you really believe in, the things that might be, you know, higher risk, that's great, in the knowledge that you've got that backup, that thing. Because one of the things that we talk about, is probably a theme that we'll come back to, is that investing done right is boring, and it should be boring, right? It shouldn't be exciting. If you do it, if all of your investments are exciting, then you're probably not doing it right. You've got a problem. Exactly. It's a bit of a roller coaster. You want the bit that you think, right, well, that's a bit that kind of the family and we're going to ultimately rely on to be pretty well secure, diversified, all that good stuff, low cost. And then you go, right, okay, well, what else have I got that I can go and do the things that really interest me, you know? And in your position, you're lucky, you know, that you have that. You've still got that freedom, where you're still trying to discover what that might be, but making sure that you've got that backup will allow you to go and go harder later, you know. But it's having it all at risk can be quite an interesting place to be.
No, 100%. That's a lifestyle for maybe some people. I know a lot of people that would be like that. You know, they seem to thrive more off like the complete uncertainty of, you know, losing everything. Like it's madness. But like I'm not like that. I think it really is it's a safety blanket, knowing that, you know, you can wake up every day, be happy, be content, be in a good place, and you're not like completely fully invested. All your assets are not in one thing, and you've got some other stuff going on the side here that ultimately is in safe hands. That's important, and that's massive when it comes to my headspace. I couldn't think of a worse position that I would like to be in personally than to be waking up every day worrying about all of everything that I've built being stuck in one thing and in one thing only, and that's a scary thought. It
is, and that's, you know, it comes back to even, you know, owning your own business. If you own your own business, okay, you're running it and you're controlling it, or at least that's your perception. There's lots of things that are out with your control. But if you're not building some financial security alongside that, we quite often use the analogy of the business balance sheet and the personal balance sheet. Can't all be in the business and constantly reinvested, because you can overinvest in your own business. You need to build up that personal balance sheet over time. This is like a long-term game. It's not something you can do overnight. And just getting that balance right, because, you know, if we end up misaligned and we're massively over here, and actually because of that risk that's attached to that, and the fact you don't have anything else, chances are it's going to get quite distracting and more stressful. And what impact is that having on the rest on the rest of your life, your family, and everybody else? So it's not like it's not all about money, and that's why we talk about, you know, the human first. But it does track back to that, and if we don't make good decisions, it does impact on our lives massively.
Yeah, there's a saying as well, like it's something like a lot of people's problems do come from money. Like it's something along those lines, of paraphrasing, but you know, I think if you can be in safe hands and take good advice as a youngster. And I know like a lot of the guys that I grew up and played with in rugby, they're not necessarily speaking to people about this, and I think it's something that, you know, I think teams, unions, in football, I think it's a little bit different. Maybe that there are sort of more, even if you go on LinkedIn, you see ex-football players and stuff that are maybe moving into this type of stuff and doing that. But yeah, hopefully times are starting to change, and athletes, sports professionals are being able to now take advice off people that are actually sound in their advice.
That's what I was going to say. Having that, the thing that we hear back from our clients all the time, and I think it's one of the most important things, is having a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
We've seen over the years, and you still see the headlines where people have taken advantage of sports people, footballers, whatever, and all sorts of crazy investment schemes. If it comes with scheme at the end, you know that's a really bad idea.
Good advice.
So maybe just throw that one out there. But listen, I think it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you, Adam. I really, really enjoy our conversations, and again, I kind of follow your next project. I'm looking forward to the podcast, just thank you for coming in and doing this with us.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.